Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another video here on the channel. Just before I actually start, I just filmed all of this. It takes about an hour to film every Animorphs video, and none of my audio recorded. Well, it did, but it didn't record the external audio on the better microphone, so I'm really sorry. You're gonna have to put up with my very echoey audio that comes as a result of filming in an attic. I'm very sorry, please forgive me, but it was either this or Animorphs 43 just never comes out. So I hope that you still enjoy this installment in Animorphs. I'm really sorry about the audio quality. It is what it is. We'll move on with Animorphs 44 as soon as I can. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another video in my series reviewing and recapping every single book in the Animorphs series. Today we're talking about Animorphs 43, The Test. It's a Tobias book, the cover of which has something fairly nightmarish on it, so I say we just jump in. We open with Tobias flying high above the forest hoping to get some food in before a storm hits. He dives down on a shrew, and he says he doesn't think about it, but he hears Taylor's voice in his head calling him a disgusting creature. Taylor, if you'll remember, is a controller kind of working in tandem with her own self. It's from Animorphs 33, you can go back and watch that video if you fancy, but suffice to say she did some torturing of Tobias, and it's definitely going to come up more in this book. But no time to dwell on that, as Tobias can see a helicopter flying over the woods, and down below he can see humans on ATVs. He flies over to the nearest ranger station where he finds out that some child called Bobby McIntyre has gone missing. Bobby is a young deaf boy whose chances of survival are going ever more slim as the storm builds. Tobias heads off to the storm front just to kind of feel something. Yeah, we're dealing with some trauma in this book. You may not want to stay around if that's sort of triggering for you. Sorry, this is just one of those ones. As Tobias remembers when his own countdown ran out and he became stuck as a hawk forever, he vows to find Bobby before his countdown runs out too. Tobias sweeps over the trees, his hawk eyes better than any human eyes could be. I like to think he's the Legolas of the group. The other Animorphs are waiting for him at the barn, but Tobias continues to sweep over the woods looking for Bobby, even as the rain starts to feel like bullets hitting him. Okay, more like paintballs, but that's less evocative. Then, just as all seems lost, Tobias spots Bobby. Now, Bobby can't hear Tobias, but he might be able to hear thought speak. Tobias lands and sees that Bobby has got caught in some kind of sinkhole. Not great when there's a flash flood on the way. Thing is, the only morph Tobias has that would be good enough to get Bobby out of there is Hawk-Bajir, and he's not practiced enough at that to get him out without slicing him to ribbons in the process. Promising in thought speak to return, Tobias flies back to the ranger station. There's nothing to be done, he has to thought speak to Bobby's dad. This is an Animorphs no-no, but there's a child in danger, so Tobias makes the executive decision to just do it anyway. Bobby's dad is a little bit freaked out, but he does agree to follow Tobias. So they find Bobby, rescue Bobby, all good. I took off down the swathe of rainless sky towards Cassie's barn. It felt so good. I played in the air like a pilot at an air show, awed the audience with my death-defying stunts. I cut my engines, fell into a nosedive ready to pull up just seconds before I hit the ground, and then a golden eagle twice my size screeching towards me like a wrecking ball. Wham! And all was blackness. I never even had a chance. Tobias wakes to the sound and sight of two vets staring down at him. His right wing is pretty broken and generally he's just kind of messed up. The vets talk to Tobias, not in a we know you're secretly an Animorph kind of way, but in a we talk to the animals at our veterinary station. They talk about how in the news it said a hawk saved Bobby. The vets chuckled. They didn't know this was no laughing matter. They didn't understand. It hit me right at that moment. I'd messed up. Big time. That headline, the kiss of death. If the Yerks found me first. Yeah, that would be a problem. Tobias gets into a bit of a flap, literally, but he stops before the vets sedate him. They leave him alone in a cage to wait this out. Just after 1 in the morning, he hears footsteps outside the door and the signature sound of Draken beams. I mean, there's maybe a chance this is the Animorphs here to do a rescue, but it seems unlikely. You mine, Andalite, asserted the Hawk-Bajir with the worst breath. Visser 3 will give praise. Darn. Before the Hawk-Bajir can take him away, some humans turn up and start firing back at them, demanding that they drop the bird. Tobias doesn't know who these humans are or if he should side with them, but he's stuck in a cage so can't really do anything about it. There are more people now, even some dressed in leather, apparently. I'm just telling you what the book told me. Tobias gets swept under a utility closet sink kind of thing, and so he can't really see what's going on, but who should show up but everyone's favourite grizzly bear girlfriend, Rachel. Rachel and the other Animorphs are there to rescue Tobias, obviously, but it doesn't take long for Tobias's literal worst nightmare to show up. Taylor is here. She grabs Tobias's cage with her artificial hand. You can just go watch the playlist. Or indeed read the book, that works too. Taylor's prosthesis, it would seem, has had an upgrade as she tries to gas Tobias with it. He doesn't want to succumb and instead tries to acquire her DNA. It's not enough though, and Tobias is once again recaptured into the nightmare he's been dreading. Tobias awakens again, this time to the glorious sight of half a dozen Draken beams pointed directly at him. And to top it off, he's been clamped to the table with very human hardware store clamps. He debates morphing, but Taylor, who is there, tells him that if he does, the Draken beams will fire. They're controlled by a computer that is sensitive to changes in shape. So he could escape, but it does mean dying. So not. He looks around at where he's being held, which is some kind of hovel, which doesn't track with the Yeeks, who normally want the best of the best. And it's even more odd because Taylor, it would seem, wants to make a deal. Civil war is coming, Andalite, she began. Yeek versus Yeek. We've had enough of the petty Visser fights, the favouritism, the punishments. The council makes us sick. We've seen this coming for a while, but it's nice to have it confirmed by the Yeeks themselves. She claims to be part of a faction who just wants the Yeeks to get on with the hosts that they already have. Not claim any more, just get on with it. To stop this conflict, which has apparently also spread to the Anati planet, and just live their lives. She even says she wants the Yeeks to be more like the Andalites with their structured lives. Even more like the humans with their democracy. Surely this can't be true. Tobias says something sarcastic, and Taylor is pleased to hear the voice of the Andalite who can stay in morph for more than 2 hours, which I guess is more plausible than Hawk with morphing powers. Taylor could torture any information she wanted out of Tobias in seconds, but it's not information she wants. She wants help taking down Visser 3. Don't answer now. She pulled a scrap of paper from her pocket and pushed it through the bars of my cage. Here. It was a web address. Talk things over with your comrades and leave me a message there. Sign it, Bandits. And she opens the cage and leaves. Once the Draken Beam sensors blink out, Tobias goes into a shadowy corner and does the classic morph-demorph to heal himself before flying away. From the air he can see he was being held in a trailer park / junkyard, a rebel hideout if ever he saw one. He heads to Rachel's and on the way there realises that Taylor has almost certainly placed a tracking device on him, so he does a quick morph to a very small morph, which would lead to the tracker falling out, but nothing happens. Rachel is pleased to see Tobias and has some choice words to say about Taylor. He fills her in on Taylor's request and they agree to meet as a gang in the barn in an hour. Marco and Axe are pretty sceptical of the idea that the Yeeks have gone pro-democracy. Cassie wants to believe that it's the truth, but maybe Taylor's just promoting democracy in order to oust Visser 3? It's hard to know. Marco mentions the torture, which the Animorphs are always careful not to bring up around Tobias. He realises this slip is because they're a little bit annoyed at him revealing his identity to rescue that kid. Jake asks Tobias, who knows Rachel best, what he thinks she's doing, and Tobias thinks Rachel is always gunning for power. She probably wants to take out Visser 3 and the bandits all in one go. But will they have a better chance to deal with Visser 3? It's hard to say. Right, Marco agreed. Capitalise on the chaos. Divide and conquer. We tried that, remember? Rachel said. The time we pretended to help Visser 1 destroy Visser 3? It didn't go over real well. This is different, Marco replied flatly. It's not about my mother this time. It's not personal. Not personal? Marco didn't know how wrong he was. Tobias makes the call. They have to make the deal and deal with the consequences, win or lose. They gather around Axe's laptop and, just as an aside, he's got internet access, but not because he's hacked into the internet, but because he has gained money by selling repaired computers. He's just paying for his internet access. I just thought that was wholesome. They get onto Taylor's website, earthisours.com, which is hysterical, and I did check and it doesn't exist anymore. They send their message and quickly get a reply back from Taylor, who says her plan is to seize the Yeek pool. They plan to meet in a public place, the bookstore, in the wildlife section. Then Axe's computer crashes, so I hope there wasn't any more to the plan. They need someone with a non-obvious human morph to do the meeting, and Tobias has just the one. Jake is not super psyched about this plan, but hey, it's the plan that they have. Rachel picks out an outfit and Tobias morphs to Taylor, or Taylor as she would have been before her accident. Yeah, it's not a kind thing to do, but Taylor is horrible, so... For a second, I trumped her. She was mine. That's clever, she conceded, recovering quickly like a good detached Yeek should. Yeah, a nice touch. But how? Is there some new improved Andalite morphing technology that allows you to acquire while in morph? She's got to put the pieces together one day, right? Tobias plays this off with, "You're not the only one with scientists," which is a good catch-all. It works somehow. They head off to the cafe to plan. They sit together, presumably confusing the kid behind the counter with their uncanniness, and Taylor gives some more details. They want to break a natural gas pipeline that runs near the Yeek pool. So they connect up the two, explode the gas, everything goes terribly wrong for the Yeeks. A pretty horrible plan, given that a lot of innocent hosts would also die. Taylor wants to take the Yeek pool hostage so that the Yeeks in space can't attack without putting it at risk, and thus they wouldn't be able to get Kandrona, everything would go terribly wrong, they would have to leave. I assume there are no other Yeek pools in the vicinity? Okay. Suddenly, her face transformed. All at once, her blue eyes filled with desperation, her pink lips parted in wordless horror. A different voice, a frightened, abused little voice, called across the table in a toneless whisper. "Don't listen," it said. "Don't listen to her." Taylor crushes her own latte, smashing the mug to the floor and causing people to stare at them. She snaps back to her usual Yeeky self and demands a refill. But why would Taylor the Yeek, who has always been working in tandem with her host, suddenly be in conflict with her and yet singing the praises of democracy? It is, as the kids say, a bit sus. Tobias asks what I was thinking, which is, won't blowing up the huge cave that runs under our entire town make things a bit iffy on the surface? But apparently Taylor's team has figured out the amount of gas they need to use in order to make that not happen. Science. And how will they deal dig the tunnel? Well, that's where the Animorphs come in. They're gonna morph Taxon. Ba-ba-da-ba. It's a terrible plan time. They all meet up after Taylor leaves to discuss whether they're gonna go ahead with this particular nightmare plan. By the way, I keep using Rachel and Taylor interchangeably in this. Editing Judith will have to correct me on the screen, I'm sorry. They apparently don't need to tell Taylor whether they're in or not, they just need to show up at the natural gas factory at the right time. But why not use a Yeerk taxon to get the job done? She says Yeerks are only ever partly in control of their taxon hosts. It's impossible to master the taxon hunger, the murderous tendencies, the cannibalistic urges. Taxon hosts are given only to low-ranking Yeerks, and, big surprise, soon they're more taxon than Yeerk. I like this as a late-stage reveal, and it tracks with what we know of the taxons so far. I wonder what you have to do wrong to get made into a taxon as a Yeerk, or put in a taxon, I guess. This apparently won't affect the Animorphs because they'll only be morphed for short periods of time. It won't be for long, they'll do it one at a time so the others can keep them in check. They go to the food court so Axe can eat and Tobias can stare out at humanity and muse on their fate. Surprise, surprise, Rachel is keen to go ahead with the plan even with the risk. Tobias reminds them all to keep in mind that Taylor cannot be trusted, which I think they knew, but Jake agrees. She's obviously got some problems, but even given the weirdness, I think we agree that this could be one of the most important missions we've had. Understatement of the century on both fronts there. Cassie is, unsurprisingly, against this plan and shocked that the others are being so gung-ho about it. Cassie isn't pro-Yeerk exactly, she's just anti-killing. They're not all like Visser 3, Cassie went on. We know that. Some of the Yeerks and controllers are just kids like us. They never had a choice. They participate or they're eliminated. And it's not like they get the information they need to make an informed decision. If you'd been raised since birth on Empire propaganda, you'd fight to take over Earth too. It's too real, Cassie. Too real. Just war theory time continues as Cassie brings up the Yeerk peace movement, and indeed Jake's brother. What if he's down there when this all goes down? Cassie decides she's not doing it, she's not participating in this mission, and Tobias can't blame her. He might even sit out himself if it weren't for the fact that someone needs to figure out this whole Taylor business. Andalite bros, Tobias and Axe. Okay, Tobias is only part Andalite, but I like calling them Andalite bros. Go and check out the gas pumping station, and all looks alright. They land and get to Andalite form, and Axe gives Tobias a quick haircut so they don't look as genetically identical. This is also one of the ways Andalites punish people who don't do things properly, but it's also the only way Axe knows how to cut hair, so Tobias just looks like he was in trouble at one point. They slip through the rear gates and someone is lurking for them in the shadows. It's of course Taylor, being creepy in the shadows, as one would be if one was a villain. She takes them to where she has stashed a big mean taxon for them to acquire. How cute, Taylor said. You're scared. We are not frightened, Axe said coldly. We are cautious. He stepped up to the hole. It's a hole. And peered inside. I see no sign of the taxon. Taylor tilted her head to one side and looked at Axe mockingly. Then go get him, silly. Oh, she's got issues, this one. They hop down into the hole, knowing full well that this could be a trap. I mean, the others are outside in morph, but who knows how long it'll take them to get here. Tobias reaches out in the dark and ends up being bitten by a taxon. He describes it as being similar to being caught in a wood chipper. Axe gives the taxon a quick tail blade swipe, meaning they have a limited amount of time to acquire the DNA. Tobias also has the added need to be quick because he has to demorph first. Usually you don't feel anything about an animal while you acquire it. This time, I sensed something. Fierce and elemental, like a scream of rage. Well, that bodes well for this mission, and the taxon then also dies, leaving the only existence of it in Axe and Tobias's DNA banks. The next morning, Tobias is late to meet the others because there were no rodents in his meadow to eat. They'd all scarpered, which is ominous. Jake, the leader, has made sure that Taylor can't come within a mile of the dig or the gas pumping station before 8 AM, or the deal is off. Largely so she won't see them as humans, but I think it's just because she's a bit of liability either way. Tobias is already bleeding from an incident where his breakfast bit him first, so they suggest he goes first. Axe is wearing a watch, by the way. Normally we just rely on Axe's sense of time, but since he's going to be a taxon for half of this, it's probably a good idea for someone else to keep an eye on the morphing clock. They lift up the sewer grate and Tobias hops down in there. The others are quite anxious about him, understandably, but he reassures them that he can handle it, and gets down there ready to morph. The morph is about as icky as you might imagine, though we do get it confirmed that taxons have compound vision, like flies. And then Tobias starts to experience the all-consuming hunger that blocks out literally everything else. He rears up ready to eat the tasty morsels above him, but then at the last second hears the voice of boy Tobias within him telling him to stop. He can't stop the hunger, but he can turn the taxon's attention onto something else, namely eating the concrete. The longer I dug, the hungrier and more frantic I got. I didn't learn until later that a taxon will dig, starved and exhausted until he dies. Tobias, Rachel called in thought speak. She had already morphed. The others must be right behind her. Answer us. Say something. More. Am I starting to feel sorry for taxons now? Jeez. Jake calls for Tobias to take a break, but Tobias, who is in full taxon mode, doesn't hear him. He just wants to keep eating. Taylor is also there now with a Draken beam aimed at Tobias, though apparently she's promised to keep it on a low setting. Do we believe her? I don't think we do. Rachel suggests Tobias shouldn't kill Taylor, but she doesn't really get in his way either. It isn't until Taylor literally shoots Tobias that he gets into demorphing mode. But Taylor can't see him get to Hawk because then she'll figure out the whole Hawk situation, so he tries to do what you really shouldn't do and get very speedily into Hawk and directly into Andalite. It helps that the others are blocking Taylor's view. "You're one lucky worm," Jake said to me privately. "Axe saved your butt. He modified her weapon so it wouldn't fire beyond setting 3. So Taylor is already showing that she's not to be trusted, but Tobias says they need to keep going with the plan, regardless of what happened. And maybe it was a triple bluff. Maybe she knew they'd modified the weapon. "She's gonna get us Vista 3, I said. Remember? That's what this is about." Tobias gives Axe some taxon pointers, and Axe says, "Actually, I did some research on taxons in the past when I was back in Andalite land, and I didn't tell you because it wouldn't be super encouraging," which is not helpful. Axe temporarily triggers the taxon's hibernation instinct, which means he doesn't eat the Animorphs, which definitely would have been helpful to share before. But before they can get into that, Axe zips off down the tunnel and starts digging. Taylor, who hasn't done some villaining for approximately 5 minutes, asks Tobias if he liked being a taxon, because some people are just cut out to be lower life forms. She also suggests that the Animorphs are just like her, opportunistic and ready to destroy things to get to what they want. Rachel has to believe that the mission will make things better for them, but Tobias is unconvinced, and then Rachel has a full-on breakdown. "They'd killed Elfangor, my father, the father I never knew. The day would come when there would be no one left, an entire planet erased. I couldn't let that happen. They're Yeeks," I repeated. "That's all." Who had Tobias being the one to snap and get angry in their bingo cards? I did not. Rachel, Jake and Marco head home to check in with their families before they continue the mission, leaving Taylor, Axe and Tobias on their own. All while Axe finishes his digging shift. Taylor then hits on Tobias a little, which is weird, and also says they could rule together, which kind of puts a spanner in her whole "I'm pro-democracy" works. But of course, it's fine, guys, because democracy just needs leaders. It's too real. As it's happening, 2 wolves drop back through the sewer grate. It's Marco and Jake. Axe should be back by now, but he's too distracted in the way only a taxon can be by the sweet, sweet delights of concrete eating. Tobias has a plan. He gets Jake to cover for him as he demorphs and then morphs to bat. He echolocates around, getting Jake and Marco to follow him until they find Axe, who is struggling, too weak to continue. There's a whole moment where Axe is like deflating because he's been bitten by wolves but still not demorphing, and it kind of seems like he's going to die or be stuck in taxon morph forever, which is just nightmarish. But Tobias calls out to him and finally manages to convince him that he can and should demorph. Tobias gets ready for his digging shift when he sees Rachel coming in with Taylor, who is crawling through the muck, which means the Yeek must definitely be in charge, as human Taylor would never do that. More aware and less overtaken by instinct this time, Tobias gets to digging, realising that it's some kind of insecurity or fear that makes the taxons keep digging. I wouldn't have understood or even noticed if I hadn't been a hawk for so long. I've experienced just enough of that feeling to recognise it. A whole species of terrified overeaters. It made me almost sorry for them. Almost. Like, a taxon redemption arc comes as quite the surprise. And with the understanding of that insecurity comes the understanding of why Taylor is the way she is. Tobias is getting tired now, but he's noticed he's eating more rocks and also starting to curve upwards. They must be nearly at the Yeek pool. I opened my taxon mouth wide. Full capacity. I swiveled my teeth so they scraped the concrete like a drill. 100 teeth screeched across stone. Friction made my mouth hot. Caustic taxon spit burned and dissolved the rock. Yeah, they're at the top of the Yeek pool, to be clear, so they're above the big cavity. They're going to fill it with gas. It all makes sense. When I first read this, I thought they were coming up from underneath and they were just going to dump a load of soggy Yeeks into the tunnel. But down below, Tobias can see said pool of soggy Yeeks churning away, and it seems like there are more cages surrounding the pool than there had been before, all of them full of people screaming. He jumps as Taylor pulls up next to him, and both Tobias and the taxon want to chomp her head off. But alas, she zaps him before he can manage it. He taps into the taxon hibernation instinct long enough to talk to her, and she wants to talk to him. "Look down there," she said, glancing at the Yeek pool. "We are so organised. We run with the precision of a Swiss watch. We are invincible. When I take command, we will reach new heights." Yes. Democracy. That is what she means. And she still wants Tobias' help to do it, but he's distracted, seeing the very place where his countdown ran out and he became a nothlit. Taylor now wants Tobias to be her host, to give him everything he's ever wanted. "Can I have freedom?" I asked. "It is a kind of freedom," she answered. "Can I be happy?" I asked. "It is a kind of happiness," she replied. Deep. But Tobias can see through Taylor and how, like the taxon's hunger, her quest for power is never going to end. All she wants is power, and all she has is envy. She looked at me, then at the pool, then back down the tunnel. and it would be my pleasure, she rasped, to prove you right. Taylor punches Tobias in his hibernation-paralysed throat and runs off down the tunnel. He turns around, calling after her to stop, but she is too fast, even though he is on his little taxon legs. He chases her all the way back to the sewer chamber right at the start and chomps on her heel to try and stop her. Scum! She was free and running for the pipeline. I revved my feet and shot forward. Stop right there, she cried. Come an inch closer and I'll blow a hole through this steel. Apparently her promise that the Animorphs would have 20 minutes to get away from the pipeline before she blew it up was, shockingly a lie. Or was it? Because if she blows the pipeline, she'll die too. Well, it seems like Taylor's body would protect the Yeerk, so the body would die but the Yeerk would be fine. It's a whole thing. Rachel and the others drag their also partially paralysed selves, because they've been shot by a Draken beam, into the chamber. Taylor uses her prosthetic arm to blow a hole through the pipeline, and the Animorphs are sucked through the tunnel and everything changes. There's no air in the tunnel, but they can thought speak to one another, and Jake tells them to grab onto each other, probably biting each other, let's be real. It would end for me where it had all begun. That cavernous hell. In seconds we'd be blobs on the pavement, gobbled up by taxon guards. He shoves them all through the tunnel and out of the sewer chamber again, all while resisting the taxon impulse to eat them all. They emerge into the tunnel, and the first thing Jake notices is that the gas has been turned off, but by whom? They get to Battlemorphs even though everyone's pretty exhausted already, and they make their way out into the station, where someone has broken in. But who? Oh man, I heard Rachel say. Oh man. I stepped around her, my rear legs weakened. Then I saw the bodies, human bodies, maybe half a dozen, male and female, suited to look like gas company workers, sprawled now every which way. They were alive, barely. They'd obviously been on the losing end of one very fierce battle. None seemed conscious. Yeerk slugs wriggled and writhed helplessly on the floor. Was it Taylor? Was it Visser 3? Who did this? They make their way through the factory until Tobias finds Cassie, crying in a corner. Cassie saved them all. Come on, Cassie, we have to get out of here. It's okay, everything's okay. Her sobs stopped. Halting half-gasps took their place. She turned in my arms, turned so that she was stood and faced me. Her eyes, red and wet, stared up at mine. Salt streaks dried on her face. No, she said. It will never be okay. It's the next day and Tobias and Rachel are out flying, enjoying some particularly good thermals. They head for the beach and discuss what happened. Cassie contacted Tidwell of the Yeerk Peace Movement and found out that just by coincidence, all of the peaceful Yeerks would have been feeding at the pool at the time it would have blown up. Visser 3 had found out and was planning on killing those Yeerks. There were multiple plans going on at the same time. Taylor was working with Visser 3, would have pinned the explosion on the peaceful Yeerks, everyone would have moved on, everything would have been bad. Would this have been better if they'd done nothing? Who's to say, but the peaceful Yeerk faction are grateful that they didn't. Was it over for Taylor? Did she blow through the hole in the Yeerk pool dome? Lodge in a crevice of the tunnel till the gas pressure died? Catch a crag of rock and hang on? Did she live? Would Taylor the girl ever live again? Would I ever stop caring? Rachel tells him that the past is the past and that he should let it go, which is advice that I'm certain that he will not follow. And that's the end. I'm really sorry that the audio went terrible on this. I genuinely didn't realise until right at the end, and I do not have the will to re-record quite so much of this. It's not gonna happen. So that was Animorphs 43. It was a pretty good time. It's a traumatic one, but the Tobias books usually are. So let's keep on going with this series and finally gun towards getting to the end by the middle of next year. If you enjoyed this, remember to come hang out on Discord where you can check out my Animorphs channel. If you want to get early access to videos and bonus content, you can check out my Patreon, that's linked below as well. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. All of the above, all good things to do. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. I don't know why, every time I film you're like, it's time for Luna. It's not time for Luna, it's time to go to bed. The other Animorphs who are... Oh, this is gonna be a long one to film, isn't it? It's the Animorphs pins and needles, it's come for me.